Greetings, loves! It is I, Tactical Girlfriend. Welcome back to the channel. I hope everybody's doing well. Today for you, I have a review of the Springfield 1911 DS Prodigy. This has been about a year on the market now. This particular handgun is brand new to me and was never shot before me. It's on loan for the channel from a friend of mine who is really nice to let me borrow it and review it. And it's a really interesting gun to me, especially because it's way out of my wheelhouse. I don't shoot 1911s. I don't really mess around with handguns of this style at all, but it is a big chunky iron. It's got a lot of interesting features. It definitely appeals to a certain kind of shooter, and it may be someone's cup of tea. It may not be someone else's, but it is interesting nonetheless. So I'm going to talk about it. As always, this is an initial review. This handgun was never fired by anyone before me, so it is a brand new handgun, and there's a lot I do have to say about it. We'll get into that later, but again, take this with a huge grain of salt. If I do have more things to talk about in the future, I will mention it, but this is just the initial review. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, the Prodigy is a really interesting gun. Again, it's a 1911 style, but it's more modernized like many of the 2011s that we've seen on the market, especially offerings from Staccato. This is Springfield's answer to that. They also made a double stack 9mm 1911. And yeah, that's a huge departure from the standard tiny capacity magazines that you normally use on a 1911 in 45 ACP. These 9mm magazines come in both 17 and 20 round versions that come with the gun, and there is an optional 26 rounder as well. So these are definitely more modern. They have accessory rails so you can mount things like weapon lights on them, better sights, and just a really interesting updated feel as well. So for some folks who are more 1911 aficionados who are looking for something more modern and contemporary, this is definitely an interesting gun. For a lot of folks like me who just want a striker-fired compact of some sort, maybe not so much, but if you are into competitive shooting or recreational shooting or need some sort of, I don't know, nightstand gun, then yeah, this could be a really interesting option for you. Speaking of magazines, one thing of note here, these magazines made by Duramag that come with the Prodigy are actually compatible with Staccato 2011s. So a lot of folks who are probably buying this gun also might have a Staccato 2011. It is very much in the same vein, so if you do use these mags, they are completely compatible with your other Staccatos, which is really nice. That really expands the options that you have on the market for magazines, and that cross-compatibility just greatly simplifies your ecosystem of magazines that you use among your guns if you are a 2011 fan. Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty here and start talking about the specs of the Prodigy. First of all, let's start with the barrel, as that's the heart of the gun in my opinion. This barrel is a forged stainless steel bull barrel with an 11-degree crown. These are really nice match-grade, precise barrels. They come in both the 5-inch version, which you see here, as well as a 4¼ inch version. I do think that the 4¼ inch version is going to be a bit more practical, especially if you're looking to carry this for any reason, or if you just want something that just fits a little bit more nicely into your rig, then yes, that's fine. The 5-inch is fine too if you just have some sort of nightstand gun or you want to use this at a competition or just for recreational use, then yeah, 5-inch is fine too. It's an absolute tack driver. I do think it's a little unnecessary and a bit extra, but if you like really big guns and you cannot lie, then sure, yeah, 5-inch is pretty fun. Now I do have to say that the barrel is extremely accurate in my experience. I was shooting out to 100 yards with this thing, no problem. It's an absolute tack driver. The iron sights were easy enough to use, and even though I didn't have an optic, I was still able to get shots on target pretty easily. I was pretty blown away by the accuracy of this thing, so props to them for making a very good precision handgun platform. Moving on, the slide is forged, and it comes in a really nice black Cerakote finish. It's got a very matte kind of sheen to it. It's not too shiny. Feels really nice. The fitment also feels really good. There's like almost no wobble in there. Some handguns really have a lot of that. This one has some really good fitments. It's also got these really nice chunky front slide serrations as well as the rear slide serrations here. Really easy to do press checks. It feels smooth as butter. Yeah, the quality there is definitely pretty high. So the slide checks out to be really nice. As far as the iron sights go, it's got a fiber optic green sight post on the very front, and on the back you have a blacked out U-notch sight. Kind of looks like Wilson Combat, but it's probably a little bit inspired and not quite actually that. Regardless, the sights are very easy to acquire. They're very intuitive. They're not too big. They're not too small. They're small enough for good precise shooting, but they're big enough to acquire quickly, and it's just very natural to point and aim, no problem. The sights just pop right up. Also, it comes with a optic mounting surface. It is optic ready, and they do offer a bunch of optic mounting plates. So whatever you have, they probably have the ability to mount that on there, and that's really nice. It's nice that that's available from the factory and you don't need to get it milled. I do have my own opinions about optic mounting plates. That is an extra failure point, but honestly, for a gun like this, that you're probably not going to be concealed carrying for self-defense, that's probably more than okay. Moving along, we have a skeletonized hammer and trigger. The trigger on 1911s are usually very well regarded, and this one is absolutely no slouch whatsoever. It's got an average pull of about 3 pounds, 9 ounces on this particular one, and it feels really, really, really good. Obviously, that's not really saying much. Let's get into the details here. Now, ghosting the trigger here, let me just show you. It's got extremely short take-up, maybe just a couple millimeters. Really not bad, maybe 4 millimeters, not bad at all. You hit a very positive wall, there's almost no creep, and it breaks very crisp. It is such a good feeling trigger. The reset is also pretty crazy. Let's see. Just a couple millimeters for the reset. It's an extremely short reset, so doing follow-up shots on this gun is a breeze. It's just very fast shooting. It's clearly made to be a high performance race gun of some sort, and yeah, that especially allows you to get shots downrange without any difficulty pulling that trigger, losing your sight picture or anything like that. No pre-ignition movement should be a problem here. It's just a very easy to use trigger, and the follow-ups are just absolutely bonkers just because of that short reset. So very nice trigger, gotta give it to them. That is a huge highlight for this handgun. Next up, we have the safety, which is ambidextrous, which is very nice, and it's extended, so it's very ergonomic, very easy to use, very positive feeling, no problem there, very easy. It does feel like it is made for slightly bigger hands, but that's just me being subjective. Nonetheless, do like the safety on this a lot. We also have the grip safety. It works just fine. It's a grip safety, you put your hand on it and you don't think about it. As long as you don't think about it, it probably won't bother you. It doesn't feel like incredibly high quality, to be honest, but it doesn't feel bad either. It just is unremarkable, which is fine. My hand goes there and I don't think about it. If you think about anything too much, it's gonna get weird, so don't make it weird. Now let's talk about my first complaint about this gun, and that is one of the controls here that annoys the hell out of me, and that is the slide release. The slide release on this thing is small, it's high, it's tucked away behind the grip, and it is pretty much impossible for me to engage it with my firing hand without completely breaking my grip. If I'm shooting this gun and I'm staying in that shooting position with my grip, I can't even reach it with my thumb at all. So that's kind of weird. I do have kind of long fingers. They're skinny, but they're long, and I should probably be able to reach it. I've never had this problem on most guns that I've shot, and maybe this is a 1911 thing. I don't shoot 1911s, it's just not my jam usually, so that might just be a training thing for me, because a lot of people who shoot 1911s like to release the slide with their support hand. I don't think that's the way to do it. I think you should not be relying on your support hand to be controlling anything on the gun, but who am I to say? There's weird things about pedigree and tradition, and people with 1911s love those things. So maybe you're just weird and you don't want to have a good manual of arms that is more centered in a contemporary understanding of handgun handling, and you just want to stick to your own ways. So using your support hand absolutely works. It's just not the way I like to use handguns. It's not the way I want to manipulate them. And I have to completely break my grip to engage this with my firing hand otherwise. Can I train around it? Yes. Do I like it? No, I absolutely hate it, and I think it's very dumb. But that's just me. Moving down the controls here, we also have our mag catch. Mag release button is okay. I think it's a little small. It does stick out pretty far, which is nice. I did find it to be a little harder to do reloads with it than I do with most handguns. I don't know what it is, maybe it's also a 1911 thing, but I personally don't really like the mag release. Does it work? Yes. Yeah, it absolutely works. It's fine, but it's just not what I would want it to be. There's just something off about it. I have to press it in pretty far for it to spit that magazine out. It does spit the magazine out with authority, but I just don't really like it. It's small, it's nubby, it has to be pressed in hard, and maybe that's the thing that would change over time. Time will tell, but regardless, I'm pretty lukewarm about the magazine release button. Next, let's talk about the lower half of this gun. The frame is steel with a polymer grip module. This has the wraparound adaptive texture to it, that Springfield calls it. It's a really, really nice grip texture. I do like this a lot. It is fairly smooth for concealed carrying, so if you're in appendix carry, this isn't going to be too uncomfortable. It's not going to shred you, but there's something weird and kind of magical about the texture that it absolutely grips onto your hand and it holds on to it really well. So recoil control with this thing is not a problem. The grip texture is very nice. It strikes a balance that I don't see in most handguns, so I'm a huge fan of that. The grip retention is very positive under recoil, like I said. It absolutely just feels great, and it is extremely unsuspecting because when you first see this texture, you're like, oh, that's nothing, but no, it's definitely substantial, and it works very well without being obnoxious. Let's also talk about the trigger guard. The trigger guard has an undercut here for your support hand, so it can anchor itself in there a little bit more and ride a little higher, which is nice. It's also got some texturing on the front of the trigger guard, so if you like to use your support index finger to help anchor this thing down, then that is an option there, and it works really well. Also, the magwell. Magwell is slightly flared, but I really think it would benefit more from a more flared magwell. Yes, you can get other magwell extensions that will help with that, but for a gun that is of this kind of design, I do think it's really begging for a more flared magwell out of the box, and I would like to see that. Is reloading it impossible? No, of course not. It works fine. You can reload it, no problem, but if you can get a little bit more out of it, then why not? Out of the box, I just really think that Springfield should have flared it a little bit more. Very minor gripe, works just fine otherwise. And as far as other features go, it has a Picatinny accessory rail, which is nice. Even if this is mostly geared for competitive shooters, it's just good to have the option to have a weapon light on your gun. Even for competitive shooting, I keep my weapon lights on my guns. I don't care. I want to have that ability if I need it. And yeah, any contemporary handgun, especially for self-defense, absolutely should have the ability to mount a weapon light. So good on them for that. Now, the takedown on this gun is a little bit weird. It has a two-piece guide rod that needs to be loosened with an Allen key, which I'm absolutely not a fan of. It's very convoluted and annoying to take apart. Therefore, it's discouraging to maintain. These guns need good maintenance, and I just don't like that design. I mean, why would you need an Allen key to take your gun apart? For crying out loud, that's crazy. Maybe that's just weird to me, and maybe that's not to other people, but I'm not a fan of that at all. So the takedown on this gun is just not really, in my experience, one of the easiest things as far as handguns go, and it could be a lot better. Now again, this thing is a big full-sized handgun, especially the 5-inch version, which is 33 ounces. It is not that light, but you know, if you're just using this thing in a competition or for recreation at the range, then sure, I wouldn't want to carry this thing ever, but it is really nice in the hands. It feels really good, and as a result, it really helps absorb that recoil. Steel frame pistols just kind of hit different. As far as the costs on these go, these things are between $1,300 and $1,400 street price, depending on which model you get, the 5-inch or 4¼ barrel versions. That's pretty pricey. It's not cheap, but it also feels like it's pretty well made as far as the fit and finish go. And it is an interesting specialty gun that is very niche for a certain niche crowd. And people are used to paying those prices for things like 2011s, so it's kind of right at home there. It is just not necessarily a price to scoff at. Now let's talk about how this thing shoots. That's the most important part. This thing is a full-size steel frame handgun in 9mm. It feels really, really good to shoot. It is very, very mild recoiling. There's such little recoil impulse. It's so incredibly easy to get your sights back on target. as soon as you pull that trigger. It's just very fast and yeah, very smooth shooting. I can't say that enough. It just is. It feels very good in the hands. The grip is very excellent, honestly, ergonomically speaking. And yeah, I have my other complaints about the controls, but as far as how it otherwise feels and shoots in my hands, it's a racehorse for sure. It's definitely geared for competitive shooters in my mind. There's just something about that a lot of competitive shooters obviously would like for many reasons, and Staccatos namely come in mind when you're thinking about stuff like this. This seems like an answer to the Staccato 2011. It is definitely clearly made to compete with it, and yeah, I think it can hang with it as long as you get one that works, which is my next point. So, reliability. This is a very unfortunate part of the review, and I just need to preface this with the fact that this is a sample size of 1. This is just my gun, but I ran into a ton of issues. Mostly failure to extract, as well as stovepipes. It would happen about every 3 to 5 rounds, so even making it through a magazine was pretty much impossible. I got about 300 rounds of Blazer, Magtech, Winchester, and Federal HST, mixture of FMJ and hollow points. They all ran into the same problems. It pretty much made it impossible to do this review properly. 300 rounds is not very much, but it was about as much as I could take before I just really wanted to stop shooting this gun forever. And yeah, I did tinker with it. I did take the extractor out. I bent the extractor. That did seem to improve it. It was also a huge pain to take the extractor out because of the way this gun just disassembles, and honestly, I wasted a lot of time tinkering with this as it was. It did improve the reliability of cycling to some degree, but still it was kind of a miracle if I could make it through a mag without an issue. So there was improvements. I do have a friend who has a Prodigy too, and hers runs perfectly fine. So again, this is a thing that maybe some people run into, which a quick Google search will show that a lot of people do have these issues. They have to send these back to Springfield, and they do correct it, which is good. But for a gun of this sticker price, I think that's completely unacceptable. There's $500 guns out there that will never have any of these problems, and this is like almost a $1,500 gun that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, according to the accounts that I've seen online. And QC at that price tag, this is absolutely unacceptable. Now, some people also say that you should swap out the Duramags for Checkmate mags. That could fix it. Again, bending the extractor maybe will fix it. Sending it to Springfield would probably almost certainly fix it, but right now where I'm at, these are just the things I have to relate to you about this. And sadly, I just don't really have much more to say about it other than I just ran into a ton of problems, and I've never had a gun be this unreliable at this price point, no less, that I think is completely unacceptable, and that's pretty bad. I cannot recommend this to anybody right now unless you find one that has a clear track record of having already shot hundreds of rounds with no problem. So yeah, that's a huge bummer, but it does need to be said. The reliability and QC on these things seems to be a big problem. And so that is the review. I'm extremely unhappy about certain parts of this gun. I love other parts about this gun. There's some subjective things about this gun that I just don't like at all, but those are subjective. So this was a very mixed bag. It was honestly very disappointing for me personally, but it's interesting, and I think that's worth talking about. So that's why I did this. That's why I still put this video out. I will make a follow-up to this if I have more information moving forward about the reliability and what needs to be done with these. And I hope this was interesting, if not entertaining, and if you did enjoy this video, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell too. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to all the supporters on Patreon who are keeping this channel alive. This channel relies entirely on the contributions from viewers like you. I don't want to annoy you all with ads, and I don't think that's very ethical. I don't want to support Google with that, and I just want people to be able to help out at the rate that they want to, if they can. So if you want to go help out, you can always go to patreon.com/tacticalgf. The biggest contributors are named at the end of the video. And that's all the handguns based on really antiquated designs that continually get modernized, that are sometimes improvements and sometimes not improvements, that I've got for you today. I really appreciate you all tuning in. Please be good to each other out there. And as always, please take care. Bye! Oh, yeah. Okay. Greetings, loves. That is reminiscent of other 2011 style models that we've seen on them. Probably a little bit more brand, like bleh. Moving further down the line of controls, we then have our magazine